Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
This is Dr. Neelam Panchal from Gujarat University, and I welcome you all in this session on planning, meaning and importance. Friends, the primary objective of the management is to solve the problem effectively, efficiently and creatively due to a highly competitive and a dynamic environment. The principles of the management have been extensively discussed to assist the managers to solve the short-term and the long-term business issues. Due to these principles of the management have been categorized into 4 basic functions, namely planning, organizing, leading or directing and controlling, which is called POLC framework. Now, these integrated and highly essential functions of an organization ensure the smooth functioning of the business enterprises on day-to-day basis and developing a strong foundation for the long-term survival and growth. Other academics and the business gurus have emphasized these management functions such as planning, organizing, staffing, and directing and controlling. So, regardless of what contribution and the bifurcation is, planning is the first and the most crucial function that is performed for the effective functioning of the management functions. This session is going to focus upon all about planning as a management function. Managers at all the levels of the organization are responsible for planning. So, you are going to observe that all the managers plan. However, the character and complexity of planning may differ at different levels of the organization. In addition, while let's say for example, assistant engineer at work site plans for the completion of the work at this site from day to day or for 2 different levels of the organization. In addition, while, for example, an assistant engineer at work site, he plans for the completion of the work at his site from day to day or for 2 or 3 days in advance. The chief project manager must plan for the entire project over a long period of time. Similarly, a multinational company's top management must plan for a longer period of time for a global wide market. So, planning is a means to some end, as such involves the choices among the alternatives, goals, alternative programs, alternative means of achievement, and when the alternative is chosen, gives the rise to the decision making which every manager would be required to do. Let me explain you the objectives of the session. The objectives of the sessions are to make you understand the meaning of the planning as a management function, to make you understand the characteristics of a planning function, to understand how the planning process takes place, and to make you understand the merits and demerits of the planning function and various types of planning. Now, let me try to explain you what is planning. Friends, it is not possible to achieve the success and a failure of a business more than the planning function of a business. The globalized and highly dynamic work environment strives for the effective planning and its administration. These crucial dictum in a highly reorganized and its fuller assimilation can only be possible with the understanding of what is meant by planning. The management function starts with setting a business objective and determining various course of actions to achieve it. The environmental conditions of the business organization are scanned by a successful business manager. A good decision maker is needed for scanning and predicting the future business environments. The process of looking back to derive a future course of action is a part of planning. and this step is a systematic and a scientific, as it follows an order of what, when, how and whom a specific job would be carried out. A detailed and comprehensive plan of the functioning in the future is what it is. Planning involves a thorough examination of an organization's physical and human resources to coordinate and contribute towards the organizational activities. Developing a detailed organization plan to balance between the needs and the demands of the organization resources and achieving the organization results is a basic management function. According to Urvik, planning is a mental tendency to do the things in an orderly way, to think before acting and to act in the light of the facts rather than the guesses. The process of selecting the best of the alternative resources is the mental one. Kunz and Ordinal said that planning is deciding in advance what to do, how to do and who to do it. The gap between where we are and where we want to go is bridged by planning. It makes it possible for the things to happen. Let's see the features of planning. So, planning focuses on achieving the objectives by deciding upon the activities to be undertaken. Planning is a primary function. It precedes all the functions of management, that is organizing, staffing, directing and controlling. Planning is pervasive as it is required at all the levels of management, but its scopes may vary. Planning is a continuous as plans need to be made on a continuous basis till an organization exists. Planning is a futuristic as it seeks to meet the future events effectively to the best advantage of an organization. Planning is therefore called a forward-looking function. Planning involves decision making as it involves the rational thinking to choose the best alternative among the various available alternatives in order to achieve the desired goals efficiently and effectively. Planning is a mental exercise as it is based on the intellectual thinking involving foresight, visualization and the judgment rather than the guesswork. Now, let us understand the nature of the planning process. The complex and a comprehensive nature of the planning makes it a function with several characteristics. Planning may have different characteristics which involves, number one, a cognitive process. The planning process is highly intellectual and thus it is cognitive. These managerial function is about thinking with creatively to utilize the existing available resources for the available opportunity. If an organization lacks in studying today's opportunity and does not reap its benefit profitability in time, it may take the opportunity into the problem tomorrow. Functions that are involved in the planning for managers are what, how, when and by whom. An organization that makes a timely decision today does not need to worry about the future. Equilibrium between the external environment and internal environment can be established by such an organization. The critical thinking and a high level of cognitive skills are required for effective decision making. Second is a planning versus forecasting. So many a times planning and forecasting seem to be similar to each other. Though they are common to each other to some extent, yet they hold a greater degree of differences. Forecasting refers to what is expected to happen if there are no way out to escape, whereas planning is all about what one wants to happen. Forecasting leads to planning. For example, a threat to the natural resources may encourage the people and nation to plan for the conservation of the natural resources, though planning involves evaluation, assessments, estimates and calculations. Yet, these are made in the presence of the available resources, time and the goals and the objectives of the natural resources. Apart from this, planning is a continuous process of the assessment and evaluation of finding out the deviations and making corrections thereafter. So, in the modern decade, planning is highly complex and data driven and involves various data mining and analytics. Thirdly, planning is the accomplishment of the group objectives. So, an organization operates with the joint efforts of a various individual with a varied personality, skills, attitude, learning and motivation. Now, these varied individuals with a varied beliefs and personality make a cohesive group that operates harmoniously to achieve the organizational goals. Thus, planning involves achieving the objective of the individual, keeping group and the organizational objectives in mind. Fourthly, the choice between the alternatives. So, the modern business environment is highly dynamic and changes at a rapid pace. The plan and the procedure that used to be effective in the past tend to be obsolete and redundant in the present scenario with a completely new and a different business environment. Similarly, the presently available resources may not be available tomorrow or may not fulfill the future new demands. So, planning involves judicious adjustments and the adaptation in the resources to grab the emerging business opportunities. The top management generally follows 3 steps of the decision making: the decision about the objective of the business, the decision about the profitability, growth, customer satisfaction and so on, that focuses on selecting the strategy to achieve these objectives followed by the operational goals. Next is planning is all pervasive. Friends, planning is a management function and it is so imperative that it pervades all the managerial functions for a goal-oriented organization. It would be wrong to state that the planning is a first step rather than it is the step that influences each managerial function to be in the organizing or controlling. Moreover, it is wrong to quote that planning is a task performed by a top level management only. Though they devote considerable time and discussion in the planning process, yet the role of the middle and the lower level of management at their respective activities cannot be neglected to draw a successful, effective plan. Several of the planning requires managers at a different level. The first step is determining the objective involving the top management. But the other steps like operationalization of the plan requires the involvement of the middle and the lower level as well. So, involvement of the people in planning process belonging to different levels in the organization can significantly boost their motivation level. Another thing is planning is flexible. Friends, for an organization to be successful, it is crucial to establish the synergies between the opportunity and the available resources. Forecasting the growth opportunity and adapting the resources accordingly does not provide a competitive advantage to an organization. These requires careful identification of the KSAs of the people, man, material, money to take an advantage of the available opportunity. So, since the business environment is prone to suffer from uncertainty and a dynamism, alteration in a mix of the material and plan is very essential to survive and suit the change. Next is planning is the integrated process. So, with the establishment of the various policies, programs, procedures, the organization established organization objectives that it aims to achieve under the planning process. So, when the organization establishes such objective and implement the interventions, it may encounter a difference of the opinion among the personnel of the organization, particularly from those who are involved in the planning process. For example, where a sales manager may look for the various products to satisfy the needs of the consumer and grab more market share, the production managers may look for keeping the production simple with list standardization. So, effective planning takes care of these conflicting interests and tries to maximize the organization interest with a least cost of an individual's interest. Now, let us see why planning is necessary or important. So, the fast changing business environment creates the need for the development and planning. An organization that adopts a lackadaisical approach in the identification of the environment change would surely struggle to survive and grow. So, there are different points about how the planning is an important management function. Let us try to look one by one. So, the first is ensures the selection of the optimum goals. Planning is a cognitive and intellectual process of the selection of the best course of action from various available alternatives. It is also about selecting one course of action that has sound chances of being profitable, feasible, achievable and economical, and reject the other course of actions that are not so feasible and profitable. So, the selected course of action ensures the overall growth of an organization, keeping in mind the organizational limitations in terms of resources, time limit, objectives and the strategies. So, in the overall development of the organization, it is necessary to optimize the overall operation of the organization and the sub-optimization of the other departments. Second is manages complexities. Friends, a single organization is a function of the heterogeneous group of the human resource who possess different KSA, values, beliefs, culture and a motivation level. In such heterogeneous working environment, it is obvious to have disharmony in terms of the organization and individual interests. An effective plan of the organization is a way to create a common interest among the individual of an organization who works together towards the accomplishment of the organizational goals in which they have shared common goals also. Thus, planning is a way towards goal directing activity. Next is survive environmental change. So, there is tremendous change in the business environment from a conservative business model to the democratic global business scenario has left the business houses to keep itself updated to meet the changing demands with the changing environment. So, the normal course of operation is affected by the change in the demand, technology, fashion, preferences and the social values. Management must try to take the advantage of the change situation by adapting and adjusting its input to meet the new demand and the preferences. So, out of the environmental change, proper scientific and a systematic planning helps to survive. Next is protection from failure. So, there is a protection from failure due to unpredictable change in the customer's taste and the preferences, cutthroat competition, rapid technological change, economic slowdown and a political unrest. So, sometimes the changes are so bad that they have to cause a complete business failure. So, many organizations are unable to survive due to ineffective planning and a poor decision making. So, planning can help in identification and evaluation of the business opportunities and threats as well as examining the various course of action thereafter, even though it cannot eliminate all business failures. Next is unity of action. Since the organization involves individuals with a diverse KSA, their harmonious collaboration is crucial for achieving the organizational objectives. Now, this is achievable through effective planning that encourages employees to collaborate and contribute to the overall success of the organization. Next is supports control and a coordination. So, the planning function supports other management functions including control and a coordination. What, when, how and by whom a function is to be executed, all these aspects are carefully planned and executed in advance. These facilitates efficient and prompt performance appraisal, enabling the identification of the deviations from the expected standards. Without proper planning, neither the quality of the performance nor the establishment of a standard performance can be effectively ensured. These will result in subpar performance, delayed task completion, wastage of the resources, disorder and ultimately a lack of control and the coordination. By carefully planning, it is possible to achieve the performance standards in a scientific and a systematic manner, measure the performance in a timely and effective way, identify and eliminate deviations promptly, and maintain a harmonious work environment. Next is planning promotes innovative ideas. Friends, it is evident that planning identifies the most suitable option among the numerous alternatives that are available. These alternatives do not naturally present themselves to the manager, but they must be actively sought out. As they embark on the journey of the exploration, numerous fresh ideas surfaced, prompting in-depth analysis to identify the most promising ones. By engaging in the planning process, managers gain a tangible ability to think critically and strategically. It results in the emergence of the inventive and imaginative concepts. Next is planning facilitates decision making. So, decision making means the process of taking the decisions. A variety of alternatives are discovered and the best option is chosen. So, the planning sets the target for the decision making. Friends, it also lays down the criteria for evaluating the courses of the action, and in this way, planning facilitates decision making. What are the limitations of the planning? So, though planning is the first and the foremost managerial function, still it suffers from various limitations and the negative connotations also. So, that includes number 1, uncertainty. We all know that future is uncertain. So, planning function prepares the policies, procedures for the future and set the goals to be achieved in the future. Owing to the uncertain nature of the future, planning functions tend to be ineffective as nothing can be assessed about the future with surety. So, planning is prone to the failure many a times. As planning is about the future course of action can only be based on the anticipation, assumptions, speculations and the probabilities. So, the management sets the objectives to achieve, prepare plans to achieve those objectives with the risk of the failure. Although data analysis and statistics have made the planning accurate and effective, yet its 100% success cannot be guaranteed. Secondly, planning is a cognitive function. So, planning being the cognitive and intellectual function requires serious attention, time and expertise to plan and make the decisions. These require maximum mental involvement and time. Managers who are constantly grappling with the operational issues on a daily basis could not devote much time and effort to planning. So, many organizations maintain planning function at the backseat as it is required only when any adverse changes occur. Thus, the effect of the planning will be observed in a long time, and therefore, the focus on the present problem is necessary than the problem of the future. Thirdly, abstraction. So, friends, planning is all about future and it is all about predicting the future. So, it involves dealing with the vague alternatives. It addresses a question that are like what if. So, since it is a function of the assumptions, estimation, guesswork and a speculation, planning works in abstraction with nothing to do with a hard and a straightforward and concrete. Next is rigidity. So, setting up of the objectives, choosing a course of action to be implemented to achieve those objectives makes the planning rigid enough to deviate from the stated path. Work for uncertain future with abstraction and speculation through predetermined objectives and a course of action makes the planning function inefficient and ineffective many times. So, the plans, the procedures, the practices with a predetermined objectives and the objectives already stated, course of action is detrimental to the creativity and the innovation. It leaves no space for the predominant work and makes the organization bureaucratic numerous times. Therefore, planning function is criticized due to its rigidity. Next is costly affair. Friends, planning is an expensive function both in terms of time and money. It requires huge amount of effort to assess and evaluate the information from within and outside the organization. Now, these require a considerable time to strongly evaluate the information and then mental and a cognitive devotion. Since it is an intellectual function, it requires experts to assess, evaluate a problem and suggesting a solution thereafter. So many a times business organizations resort to expert houses offering planning functions from the data extraction to the data analysis to policy formulation, and these outside experts cause huge cost to an organization. Now, let us try to look into benefits from organizational perspective. So, gives an organization and given the situation and the sense of the direction, without plans and the goals, the organization merely react to the daily occurrences without considering what will happen in the long run. So, the solution that makes sense in the short term doesn't always make sense in the long term. By avoiding this drift solution, plans can ensure that the short-term efforts align with and contribute to the future goals. Concentrates on the objectives and the outcomes. Plans help keep those involved in the execution focus on the expected outcomes. Furthermore, maintaining a clear vision of the objective also serves as a source of motivation for the employees. Fosters collaboration among the diverse gaps and the groups. Diverse groups cannot successfully collaborate on the joint projects without a comprehensive plan. So, there are countless examples, like for example, plumbers, carpenters or the electricians. Now, they cannot construct a house without blueprints. Furthermore, military operations necessitate the collaborations of the Army, Navy and the Air Force units. So, by planning ahead, management can anticipate potential issues and make the adjustments in advance to prevent them from occurring. Of course, surprises such as 1973 quadrupling of the oil prices can always catch an organization short, but many changes are easier to forecast. So, planning for these potential problems helps to minimize mistakes and reduce the surprises that inevitably occur. Provides the guidelines for the decision making. Decisions are future oriented. If the management does not have any plans for the future, they will have few guidelines for making current decisions. If a company is aware that it intends to introduce a new product 3 years in the future, its management must be aware of the decisions that they make now. So, plans help both the managers and the employees keep their eyes on the big picture. It serves as a prerequisite to employing all the other management functions. So, planning is a primary because without knowing what organization wants to achieve and accomplish, management can't intelligently undertake any of the basic managerial activities: organizing, staffing, leading and controlling. So, after understanding all about planning, let me summarize the session. Friends, we have seen that planning is the crucial, fundamental, first and a foremost function of the management. It is the function that lays down foundation stone for the other managerial functions such as organizing, staffing, directing and controlling. With a view to meet future uncertain event, it is also about retrospection and enhancing the planning, eliminating the flaws committed in the previous plans. So, planning is being cognitive, continuous and the future driven process. It is engrossed with the various merits and the limitations as well. So, planning is not a simple and easy to perform function, rather it is cognitive and a comprehensive function that requires various chronological steps to be followed. So, be it objectives, procedures, rules, strategies and the policies an organization need to define its planning function accordingly in order to make the organization successful. So, the conclusion here is make sure that in the organization wherever you are going to work in the future, planning is foremost. So, make sure that you plan well because that is the backbone of your enterprise. I hope you are clear with all the fundamentals and I hope you like the session.